Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe, addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
One of the more popular programs on TV today, particularly on the cable channels, is the cooking shows, and Americans love to get new recipes, and we're going to do that today. We have a guest we've had on before. He is a member of the faculty at North Idaho College, Rick Schultz, and he's the instructor for culinary arts, and he's had a great background both in restaurants, too, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful food expert, and he also runs a restaurant at North Idaho College called Emery's. Rick, welcome to the program. We're so pleased to have you back, and we know you have some wonderful recipes for our viewers that they could try on special occasions when they're having guests at their home.
Well, I do, but first of all, you know, I'd like to say thank you for having me here. And I'd say I'm really nervous this time because since the last time I was on the show, I was down in Lewiston, where I was born and raised, and I can't believe how many people saw me on your show down in Lewiston. And then I'm up in Nelson, British Columbia, where my son is living, and I ran into friends of his friends' parents up there that said they saw me on TV. So now I realize really how big of a viewing audience this is, and so now I'm nervous this time.
You're kind of, I'll make you a little more nervous since we won last time. It goes across Canada now, so you'll have more viewers. Anyway, we're very grateful to have you here, and I welcome our panel. And we have our two regular panel members, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in Idaho, and Erna Reinhardt, who is Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College. And Janelle will start today's question.
Rick, welcome to the program. This is going to be fun to talk about food, and I hope some of our viewers will be grabbing their pencils so they can make some notes as we go along. But you have a very special menu that you've sort of developed for today's program. So can you tell us a little bit about how you decided on this one?
Well, this summer I spent 6 weeks with my children in Thailand, Cambodia, and southern Vietnam. Just traveling around, and needless to say, that food is wonderful. It's great, fresh, and quick food. So that's kind of why I thought I would bring some of those recipes. But before we get started, I also thought I'd bring you guys a little treat, because you also always have to have a little bit of food. And Erna was wondering, where's the food? And these happen to be Rice Krispie Treats, an American favorite. In fact, so much of an American favorite, you'll notice it says the original. However, I beg to differ with that, because while I was in Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam, we went on a tour, and if they can put up the first picture, we went and they were making Rice Krispie Treats right there in southern Vietnam. And I found this so interesting. And what this is, what you're seeing now in this particular picture is a big wok full of black sand that they get very, very hot. It's got an open flame underneath it, and it gets amazingly hot. And then if they can go to the next picture, you will notice that to that they add regular whole rice that has not been shucked at all. And so the rice is put in there, and after sitting in that hot black sand, the rice begins to pop. Just like popcorn in oil, they pop the rice in front of you in hot black sand. And then the next picture that they will show you is where they sift out all that black sand, and then they mix that with a corn syrup sugarcane syrup. Mix that up, and there you have them rolling out the Rice Krispie Treats, as it were. And then the final picture is where, of course, they all have to be put into individual packages. And I thought that was pretty darn interesting to see Rice Krispie Treats in their original location of mass production. And so
really interesting.
I thought that might be fun to share with the viewers, because I know I found that very interesting.
Which country was this in?
That was in southern Vietnam along the Mekong River.
Erna Reinhardt.
Okay, you brought, it looks like 5 recipes, Rick, so why don't you choose which one you want to start us with and go through that one.
Well, the first one we're going to look at is the Thai coconut chicken soup. And because oftentimes that is the one that soups are the ones that you start. And the recipes that are going to follow, you could either put them all out for a group of people, or they could stand alone, whichever you prefer. In Asian cooking, many times, as you've noticed, they often will put out many different types of foods, and then you just eat from the beginning.
I think that they'll put this on the screen if you'll go through the ingredients for the Thai coconut
Sure.
chicken soup.
I'll be happy to. So the first ingredient on that is a quart of chicken stock, and as I tell my students, the most important thing with every sauce or soup is to start with a good sauce. If you start with a good flavored stock, one that is pleasant to your palate, then everything else you add to that is only going to make it better, give it more dimensions and a lot more flavor. But if you start with a good stock, everything will go well. The next item is lemongrass. Sometimes that's a little bit of trouble to find around here. And if you do have some trouble finding that, lemon zest from a fresh lemon will work just as well. And if you get some fresh herbs, you can also, I grow lemongrass on my patio pots right there. And instead of using the big dragon dracaenas that you put in the middle to give you that flair in a patio pot in the middle of flowers, I put lemongrass there. And it gives you almost the exact same thing.
We'll have to move through them pretty quickly because we have 5 and time's already a third gone.
Oh, see that? I get to talking. Kaffir lime leaves, again, you're probably going to have a hard time finding that. So lime zest. Fresh ginger, of course, is delightful. Best way to store that is uncovered in the refrigerator, not wrapped up, or in the freezer. Just a little tidbit. And then Thai chilies, depending on how hot you want it. Garlic cloves, unsweetened coconut milk. You can find that in all grocery stores now. The next item is Thai fish sauce called nam pla, and that is in Thailand they use that in replacement of soy sauce. It's strong, it's salty, but it adds a great dimension to your cooking as well. A little bit of sugar because they like to balance out hot, sweet, sour, and then we have mushrooms. You have more lime juice there. Your cooked chicken, ground pepper, and cilantro leaves would round that out. And after that, it's pretty simple to put together. Heat your stock, and then basically you're going to just begin adding all the ingredients in order of this recipe. And the most important thing to remember is once you get them going, to reduce your stock to a simmer so that it's not boiling and breaking up your product. You like to keep it nice and whole.
That sounds wonderful. Let's go right on to the next one. You've done the one on the chicken soup. Now what's next?
The next item is ginger chicken saute. This is a real easy to put together. Remember, when it says chicken ginger saute, that is a guideline. If you happen to have pork, substitute pork. If you happen to have beef, substitute beef. You know, don't get hung up on
Sure.
what the recipe says. And so there we have our chicken meat diced, adding our soy sauce, some Oriental sesame oil. Always remember sesame oil is very strong, so you want to add that in little bits. And then your fresh ginger, garlic cloves, and then peanut oil, and little bell pepper. I like to add a variety of colors, red, yellow, green, not only because they have different flavors, but also because they are going to look different in your dish. It's going to make it real pretty. And on this one, you're going to just place your chicken in a baking dish, add all your ingredients, and you're going to just kind of marinate that. Heat your oil in a nonstick skillet. Remove the meat from the marinade, saute a couple of minutes until it's lightly brown. Turn, reduce the heat to a medium-low, and then add your peppers. Cook 3 or 4 minutes. You don't want the peppers cooked until they're soft. You want them to have a little bit of texture left in them, and then you're good to go. This whole dish you could have it from start to finish in probably 15, 18 minutes.
I'm going to pause before we do the next recipe because some of our viewers won't be able to get all this down. You brought everything that's on the screen, which is great, but for you who don't get it down, you can go to our website. It's www.nic.edu/public forum, and these recipes will be there. Let's move on to the third one now, Rick.
The third one is, the third one is actually the third, the fourth, and the fifth because they're all going to go together, and this
Okay.
is chicken satay, which is a favorite, Thai favorite, standby. And the wonderful thing about this particular dish is that everything can be made the day before.
Oh, good.
And so if you are having a group of people over, oftentimes one of the things that's frustrating is that you spend so much time in the kitchen and you don't get to enjoy your company. So this can all be prepped up the day before. You have coriander seed, which is basically cilantro seed. It's the same. That's the same ingredient.
So are you starting with the cucumber sauce?
Nope. I'm starting up at the top with the marinade for the chicken. Let's see, the chicken. How are they labeled?
Chicken marinades.
Chicken marinade there.
Okay, we'll start with that one.
Yeah. So we're going to start with that. Coriander, cumin, chopped garlic, again fresh grated ginger, chicken breast. You'll notice there's the fish sauce, which is that nam pla. Again, curry powder. Turmeric powder. Turmeric's an interesting flavoring ingredient, but mostly here we're just using it for color. We want a bright, that's that bright kind of orange mustard yellow color, which that's what we're looking for there. Coconut and then palm sugar. And of course, if you didn't have palm sugar, you could use regular table sugar.
And on our screen, we're showing how much, like if it's 1 teaspoon or if it's 2 tablespoons or whatever it is. That's listed there too. We just didn't have time to. And now you're going to describe how you put that together.
So the chicken, is beaded flat using the flat side of a blade of a cleaver. You could use the bottom of a saute pan. You could use a rolling pin, whatever you'd like to do there. And then the coriander and cumin are actually toasted in a dry saute pan, which is very interesting because you always have to remember that with food, color change is going to be flavor change. So by toasting those whole seeds in a dry saute pan, you are going to get a little bit of color change there, but you're going to excite the natural oils that are going to be in those spices, and so that's going to give you a much more fresh and flavorful spice instead of just using the ground. And then after that, you have to watch it very closely. After they're toasted, you immediately pour them out into a plate so that they begin to cool, and then those can just be ground in like a little coffee mill or a coffee grinder. You can grind them up to order right there. That adds a lot more flavor. And then you are going to mix all the rest of the ingredients together and marinate that overnight. And then the chicken pieces are then threaded onto like a bamboo skewer or metal skewer, something of that nature, loosely folding them in half and piercing them. And then when you are ready for them, up until that point they can be all prepped up. And then they're grilled or barbecued, something with some fairly high heat, cooked pretty quickly so it doesn't get overcooked and tough. And then it should only take you about 5 or 10 minutes to cook those. Right. And then with that would be the nam rim satay, which is the peanut sauce.
Right.
And let's see if they can bring that up. And the peanut sauce is used a lot in Thailand, and a very, very flavorful topping. And this is quick and easy, and again can be done the night before. 4 ounces of roasted unsalted peanuts, 3 to 4 cloves of garlic chopped up, an ounce of onion, or that would be probably about a half of a small onion, 1 or 2 tablespoons of red or masaman curry paste. Never skimp on your curry or your curry paste, because the more expensive it is, the way better it's going to be. So it's always good. There's the fish sauce again that you always see, which is a component of...
a teaspoon of that.
Yep, teaspoon of that, 8 tablespoons of coconut milk, lime juice, 4 to 6 teaspoons, and then palm sugar or table sugar again. And here we're going to...
2 to 3 teaspoons of that.
Yep, and here we're going to grind and crush the peanuts into a fairly fine powder, and combine that with the remaining ingredients except the lime juice to form a smooth paste. And then you thin that out with a little chicken stock if it's too thick, and then add the lime juice just to balance out your flavors there.
And then you have your final one is cucumber sauce or ajad.
Ajad, and that's your cucumber sauce, and that is 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. And that is there, like, for instance, in place of the lime juice to give you that sharp pungency. A teaspoon of sugar, 2 or 3 tablespoons of cucumber, very coarsely chopped or sliced. Shallots or purple onion would be fine, and then 3 to 4 Thai chili peppers, depending on how much heat you like to add to it. And those, you just combine your ingredients and leave stand overnight. And almost every single meal in Thailand contains some sort of cucumber. Even if it's just sliced cucumber, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, it's always got cucumber there somewhere as a palate cleanser and to, quite frankly, cool your mouth off a little.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've joined us and you're looking at the screen and there's a lot there, on some of them we indicated a teaspoon of this, that, and others we didn't indicate, but on the screen all of them say, 4 ounces of this or 2 tablespoons of this. And if you don't get all this down, we want to invite you to our website for these 5 ingredients or parts of a recipe, and that is www.nic.edu/public forum. And for some time we'll keep these recipes up here. Rick, it's just great that we got through those, but we have some other questions, and we'll return to Janelle Burke.
I liked your suggestions very much, that you could do ahead, because lots of us are busy, and if we want to entertain, we want to be with the folks who are coming. So the do-ahead recipes are really very helpful, and also the recipes that can be done quickly. Now, I'm one of those persons who likes to cook on high, everything hot, fast. So what is your advice to me?
Well, my advice to you is don't wander very far from the stove, quite frankly, and keep a hot pad at close range, because your handles are probably going to get hot. And then move your food on and off. Move your pans on and off the heat. When I owned a restaurant, I had only electric burners in my restaurant, and you can imagine, how long it takes to heat up and cool down an electric burner. So when I started the dinner shift, I would turn everything on high, and it was just a matter of on and off, because I had to have that. I didn't have the time to wait. So cook like that, and Asian food is great for if you like to cook everything on high, because generally things are prepped in smaller pieces, so they do cook very quickly. So you don't have to worry about long cooking times, which is high heat is a bit detrimental to.
Thank you.
Reinhardt.
Rick, I'm sure that fresh is always the best, but could some of these items be made in a larger quantity and then stored in your refrigerator, or could any of them even be frozen?
Mostly, when you think of Asia and Asian cooking, and then you put yourself kind of there, you begin to realize real quickly that refrigeration is not a big part of their culture, simply because so many places don't even have refrigeration. So they are always, when I was there, every morning you have the Asian markets, and everybody brings out all of their fresh ingredients, and you shop for the day, probably very much like in Europe, where you shop for the day. And so by and large, I would say most of these things you wouldn't refrigerate, although if I was going to make, for instance, the coconut soup, I would certainly make enough that there would be some waiting for me for lunch tomorrow.
Excellent. One other question before we go back to Tony. You mentioned that you could grow the lemongrass in a patio pot. How about some of these other herbs that were in your recipes?
Cilantro, of course, grows well. I grow lots of basils. I probably have 5 or 6 different types of basil, and that includes Thai basil. And I hate to admit it right now, but I am going to on, let's say, international TV. I did smuggle some basil seeds back into the country this year. Yes, Tony, I'm bad. But I'm going to try growing some real basil, Thai-style basil that I could never find seeds for here in the United States. So, but basil, cilantro, of course, garlic, lemongrass, kaffir lime. I have a plant growing at home, a tree, though it's still sketchy as to how many leaves it's going to produce in the long run. But I'm trying.
If you succeed with those seeds, you tell us, and we'll let our viewers know if they can do it also. But of course, I guess the question is getting the seed, but that's really wonderful and fun. Also, on the show that you've been on before, you've done all kinds of different wonderful foods and recipes. In addition to this one that you emphasized today, there are a lot of different occasions during the year, holidays, or weddings, or anniversaries, and all. What are some of your other recommendations to homemakers who wish to do certain things? You're very much involved, too, with how things are displayed and the color and all of that. Give some advice to our viewers. Tips that could be helpful.
Well, the first tip that I would say is to plan what you're going to do. make a plan well in advance so that it's not a rush, so that you have time to think about it, so you have time to make your prep list, so you have time to get your shopping done ahead of time so that you're not rushed at the last minute. Also, so that you have all the ingredients. One of the most frustrating things is to make a recipe, and you get halfway through, and then you go, oh my gosh, I don't have this. And then you immediately start getting frustrated, and that's not fun. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I tell my students all the time is, as you are cooking the recipe, be thinking of how you want it to look on the plate, because it helps you, number one, achieve the desired results, and number two, it gets you thinking about how to make it more pretty. I tell my students that when people sit down, whether it be in a restaurant or at home, the very first thing they do is they eat that food with their eyes. They look at that food, and if the food looks fabulous, it's going to taste better than what it is. If the food is placed on the plate and it's sloppy or dull looking, it's not going to taste as good as maybe the hard work you put into it. So if you're going to take the time to create and make something very special, take that extra little bit to make it look real nice. And then when people sit down, you immediately introduce something positive. They go, oh my gosh, look how gorgeous that is. And immediately they're thinking positive things as opposed to ho-hum.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's also nice when you're doing all the work of cooking and having people automatically giving you compliments and they haven't even tasted it. So that's kind of an extra little bonus.
Yes, that is. Before we go back to the panel, I have a feeling some of our viewers, and they may not have computers, for example, may want to contact you. Is it okay if we give them?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Shall we give them an email or a phone number or both?
Well, if they don't have computers,
They wouldn't have an email. No,
we should give them